You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast brought to you by 90 Min. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this edition, we're going to be rounding up the latest Arsenal-related transfer reports. We're going to be rounding them all up, trying to make sense of them. I'll be sharing my views and my opinions on the stories that we're going to be discussing, and I'd love to hear from you guys live in the chat box as well. So please do get involved. I want to say a massive welcome as well to the 100 or so subscribers that joined the channel overnight last night off the back of the last video we did, the last podcast, the last episode that we put out. So a massive welcome to all of you guys and thank you for signing up to the channel, and I look forward to you becoming part of the Chronicles of a Gooner family. We are now just around about 100 subscribers away from the 14k mark, which we've been kind of struggling towards for a little while now. So if you are new and you like what you're watching, you like what you're listening to, then please do consider hitting that subscribe button. If you'd like to go one further and become a member of the channel, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description, and we'd love to have you guys too. Without further ado, let's get into the latest Arsenal transfer news, and we're going to kick off with the report linking Arsenal with a move for the Barcelona goalkeeper Neto. Now, according to reports, Arsenal were in for Neto previously. He's a player that they showed interest in a little while ago, again during Mikel Arteta's tenure, but you know, when they were looking at Runarsson, I think it was, that's the time when they were supposedly interested in Neto. The Barcelona stopper is limited in terms of his minutes. You know, he's not getting a look in at Barcelona. Ter Stegen is obviously the main man at the Camp Nou. Neto is, in my opinion, one of the better backup goalkeepers, if you like. But of course, you know, there comes a point in your career as a goalkeeper where you need to be playing regularly. You want to be playing regularly. And Neto is not likely to be afforded that opportunity at the Camp Nou. And so he apparently is quite open to a move away from Catalonia. Now, the Brazilian goalkeeper, as I say, is someone that Arsenal were credited with an interest in previously, but they made no progress in terms of the negotiations with Barcelona the first time around. According to Mundo Deportivo in Spain, talks are now being held between Arsenal and Barcelona over a deal to sign the 31-year-old goalkeeper, who, as I say, has wanted to leave the club for a little while now. Now, remember, Barcelona's situation right now is incredibly interesting because we're talking about one of the great institutions of world football, one of the biggest clubs on the planet. However, their financial situation right now is dire. It is a really, really worrying and concerning situation for them. And they're going through a major cost-cutting exercise at the moment. Would Neto have been available under normal circumstances? Probably not. Barcelona would have probably looked at the situation and said, well, we need a backup goalkeeper and we don't really need the money. Remember, whatever Arsenal are going to pay for Neto is likely to be quite insignificant. Insignificant in terms of what it would cost us, what it means to us. But from a Barcelona point of view, I think any fee that they can get in, as well as sort of getting him off the wage bill, is massive for them. He is supposedly on quite a high wage. Now, I don't know exactly what that wage is, but he is somebody that would, you know, that would help them in terms of lowering that weekly cost at the moment. If they were able to move him on. I mentioned 31 years old. He's been capped for Brazil on just the one occasion. He joined Barcelona actually from Valencia back in July 2019 in a deal worth £23.4 million, which is quite a fair amount of money for a goalkeeper. And obviously he's been at Barcelona ever since. But as I say, opportunities for Neto have been very, very limited. And you only need to look at the statistics during his time at Barcelona to gauge that and to understand that he has only made 17 appearances for the first team. In terms of his profile as a goalkeeper, though, he is thought to be the type of goalkeeper that Mikel Arteta is after. Somebody very comfortable with the ball at his feet, very happy to play out from the back, and somebody that would complement our playing style. The problem here is that it's kind of contradictory to some of the reports that we've read over the last few weeks. You know, we heard that Arsenal were very close to doing a deal for Ajax's Andre Onana. Then we heard nothing about that. It seems like that rumor has completely disappeared. And many people, many reputable journalists were reporting that the reason for that was Arsenal preferred a homegrown option. And that was why they weren't going to pursue a deal for Onana. As well as that, he's got he's got an issue, with the doping ban that he's currently having to face. And I know that's been reduced, but there still is a ban currently in place for him. So that obviously complicates matters further. And, you know, those factors combined are said to be why Arsenal have decided against pursuing that interest or original interest in Andre Onana. Then we were linked with Aaron Ramsdale of Sheffield United, but it's expected he is probably going to cost a little bit too much money if you're talking about a backup goalkeeper. And as I've said previously, yes, we've heard that Arsenal have greater funds available to them this time around or this summer than maybe we'd envisaged when the season ended. But is it so much money? Do they have so much money available that they can afford to spend in excess of £20 million on a backup goalkeeper? I'm not so sure. What is going on with Bernd Leno? That is also key in this. You know, Bernd Leno is someone who has been linked with a move away from the club for a little while now. Is that going to happen? Is that going to materialize? Is somebody going to come and stump up what Arsenal believe to be Bernd Leno's value? All of that is very, very up in the air. So in my mind, I'm not actually sure if Arsenal are looking for a first choice goalkeeper or Arsenal are looking for a backup goalkeeper. If it is a backup goalkeeper, then Neto feels like a reasonably good signing. If it's a first choice goalkeeper, though, is he an upgrade on Bernd Leno? I would say probably not. And therefore, this wouldn't really make sense. Now, Neto is according to Transfermarkt, and again, I always say this, these valuations, you know, you got to take them with a pinch of salt, but their valuation of the Brazilian is £5.4 million, which isn't a significant amount of money. Do Arsenal see him, though, as someone who could do as good a job as Bernd Leno, but would be available at a fraction of Bernd Leno's value? And therefore, if we brought him in and sold Leno, we stand to make a significant profit that can then be invested in other areas. I think for me, Arsenal need right now, as it stands, Bernd Leno is staying put. I've heard nothing to suggest that is not going to be the case, that Bernd Leno is going to leave this summer. We haven't had any bids come in for him yet, nothing concrete anyway. And so in my mind, we should be looking for a backup goalkeeper, in which case I'm okay with the Neto deal. You know, we went and signed Runarsson last time out. That didn't work out, as we all know. And now Runarsson is closing in on a move away from the club, a move to Turkey, where he will sign for Altayspor. And from Chris Wheatley's information, it appears that is going to be a permanent deal that will take him to Turkey for good. You know, signed by Arsenal, we were led to believe as a third choice goalkeeper in the first place. Runarsson didn't make many appearances. I think he made 6 appearances. He got a clean sheet, or he kept the clean sheet in 3 of those. But of course, that game against Manchester City in the Carabao Cup was kind of a disaster class, wasn't it, from Alex Runarsson? I think from then on, there are very few Arsenal fans out there that have any faith in him going on and sort of, establishing himself as a goalkeeper in the future at the highest level. There were question marks about that signing when we made it. And I think those questions have been justified by the fact that his performances haven't been up to standard and the fact that the club are looking to move him on so quickly. But yeah, I mean, going back to Neto, what do I think about him? You know, it's hard for me because we're talking about a goalkeeper who made, what did I say, 17 appearances for Barcelona since July 2019, which means he is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a regular. Is he an upgrade on Berlino? It's impossible for me to say. But I just wonder, I just wonder if Mikel Arteta is thinking to himself what I just kind of said, which was, if he can do the job that Leno can do and is a better fit stylistically, i.e. able and more comfortable to play the ball out with his feet, which is clearly something that's very important to the manager and clearly important to the way he wants to play moving forward. Does he see this as an opportunity to be a little bit clever, try and get Neto in, and let Leno go, and then the money that comes in excess of what we pay for Neto would be available to spend on either bringing in another goalkeeper or bringing in players in other positions? I don't know. The worry is, and I can see a couple of you have mentioned it in the chat, and you're absolutely spot on. As I said before, Neto is on big wages at Barcelona. What that salary is exactly, I'm not sure, but by all accounts that I've read, it seems that he is a very well-paid player. And I wonder if Arsenal will want to make that commitment from that side of things. The transfer fee at a time like this is not necessarily an issue. I think that, as I say, if he's rumoured to be worth around about £5 million, I'd imagine Barcelona would bite your arm off for that. They're desperate, as I say, to raise funds and to cut costs. But, the wages are a big deal, and the wages are probably more problematic actually than any transfer fee, because that is something you're committing to paying over a longer period of time. So not entirely convinced about this one, not sure about it. As I say, rumors have emerged from Mundo Deportivo, who are a Barcelona based publication. Are they always spot on? No. Sometimes they can be just like all the other publications that are looking for a rise during the transfer window. But what I found really, really interesting was how interested they claim Arsenal were in Neto previously, because I'd heard whispers of it, but it was never like, when I think back to that period of time, it was never one of those deals that we heard loads and loads about that I was kind of sure was going to happen, or sure was at least being explored by the club. It was kind of mentioned, brushed under the carpet, and now all of a sudden Mundo Deportivo are talking about Arsenal having had this major interest in Neto. And I'm not sure if they're kind of overblowing this story a little bit, and if they are, then we need to be wary of that, of course. Let's move on. Let's talk about a little bit about, before we do that, let's go into the comments, because I can see lots of you talking about this goalkeeping thing. Before we move on, let's see what we've got. Inter says Arsenal don't have a clue what they're doing, let's be honest. Brad Richardson says, if he's coming as a number one, then I'm not on board with this. I'd rather we signed Onana or Ryan. Gooner72 says Onana is doable, but if we bin Leno, we're keeperless until November. Chris Pantelli says, all these idiots that believe we have £250 million. If we did, would we be so bloody poor and useless in the market? I don't think anyone believes that we've got £250 million, Chris. I think people just are pleasantly surprised by the fact that Arsenal seem willing to do some significant deals at a time when I really feared the worst. We were talking about going into our first season without European football for 25 years off the back of a global pandemic, and taking into account kind of the issues that we've had over recent years. I think people were just pleasantly surprised by the fact that we may, or look like we're going to have a bit more money to spend than they initially thought. But 250 million is excessive. We might spend 250 million, but if we raise 75 million from transfers, then that isn't really laying out 250 million. That's kind of the point. And I don't even think it's going to be that much for what it's worth. But that's, I think, why people are sort of a little bit more optimistic than they would have been before. What else have we got? Brad says Aston Villa have a good goalkeeper. Brad says we're going into pre-season without a first-team goalkeeper available. Yeah, I mean, look, Bernd Leno is obviously at the Euros, or was at the Euros, and he's on his holiday now, which, you know, he's entitled to. And as I said on one of the streams yesterday, you're always going to get this off the back of a major tournament. You're going to start pre-season with some of your key players unavailable. That's just the way it works. It's not something you can necessarily beat Mikel Arteta over the head with. If you want to have top international players at your club, then there will be times where international duty will get in the way, where they will be involved at major tournaments and therefore return later to the pre-season setup. I mean, what do you want to do? Do you want to have lesser players so that they don't get caught up in international tournaments? And don't get an additional 2 weeks off or whatever it's going to be. I don't know. Let's see what else we've got here. A couple of you kind of calling for Nick Pope. Nick Pope is a goalkeeper that, yeah, I quite like, and I wouldn't be too. Well, I wouldn't be at all against that. I wouldn't. What else have we got? Colin says this hunt for a goalkeeper proves that Arteta did make a mistake and has realised it when he sold Emi Martinez. I've never seen a worse period of business in Arsenal history. I actually disagree with that, respectfully, of course, but I do disagree with that because it all depends on what I was saying about 5 minutes ago. Are Arsenal looking for a second choice goalkeeper, in which case they didn't make a mistake on Martinez because Martinez didn't want to be that. You know, Martinez was not happy to fight for a position. Martinez has said that. We've heard it from the horse's mouth. He was unhappy because he was not guaranteed to be Arsenal's #1 goalkeeper. And off the back of that, he decided that the best thing for him would be a move away. Now, couple that with the fact that Arsenal needed money at the time, needed to get business done so that they could strengthen the team in other areas. It just felt like a good fit for everybody. If Arsenal are looking for a first choice goalkeeper because they feel that Bernd Leno is not good enough, then I would accept your point. But I don't think that's the case. I think that Bernd Leno is seen as good enough. Arsenal made a decision to keep him over Martinez. Arsenal made a decision that he was the #1. Leno himself has said repeatedly that he's never had the feeling from Arsenal that he was anything other than the club's #1. And what you're talking about here is Arsenal needing to bring in a backup goalkeeper. Now, remember, when you bring in a backup goalkeeper, it's all good saying, go and get this person, go and get that person. But that player is going to be well aware of their role in the squad prior to signing for you. And ultimately, for them to agree terms, they have to be happy, don't they, with that role in the squad. If they're not happy with that role, then they're not going to want to join you. And this is the point. It's not so easy to go out and look for a backup goalkeeper, because what you're looking for is someone of a high standard who could step in and fill in and deputize when called upon, but also has to acknowledge that they are going to be second in the pecking order and aren't going to play week in, week out. And that is even more difficult nowadays, given that we're not in Europe, because as I said previously, you know, the group stages, you could guarantee whoever that goalkeeper was going to be 6 starts in the Europa League group stages, and you knew that Arsenal would be able to get away with that and still navigate safely through the group stages. You can't do that now. That's a load of games that deputy, backup, cup goalkeeper, whatever you want to call them, was going to be guaranteed, and now they're not. So it makes it even harder, in my opinion, to fill that position. As I say, if Arsenal are looking at Neto as a second choice goalkeeper, then I don't think you can say they made a mistake with Martinez. On that basis, you can say that if you genuinely believe that Martinez is a better goalkeeper than Bernd Leno, and I think that's an argument that you know is certainly a valid one and certainly worth discussing. But I don't think the move that we're making now, looking for a second choice goalkeeper, is because of that, because Martinez didn't want to be that. What else have we got here? Big hello to Thomas. Haven't seen you in the chat for a while, Thomas. How you doing? He says, hi, Harry. Arteta out. Edu out. Kroenke out. Now, Arteta has no clue. He's a disaster. Out now before we as a club are dead. I haven't seen you for a while, but it's good to see your views haven't changed. Jack Burgess says, instead of getting Kia Joorabshan's crap again in Neto, Why aren't we going all out for Emerson Royale? Barca are in an even bigger mess than us and need to shift players immediately. Yeah, it is worth noting that Neto is a client of Kia Joorabchian, an agent that Edu is known to have a good relationship with, and an agent with whom we've dealt with in the past, not always successfully, it has to be said. But yeah, there is that link there. And that may play a part if Arsenal do decide to pursue a deal for him. People kind of talking about Emerson Royale. Of course, he was playing his football last season for Real Betis. Now, he was part owned by Barcelona in the first place. They didn't sign him. They activated a clause in that part ownership agreement with Real Betis in order to take him over to the Camp Nou on a full-time permanent basis. I don't imagine that he would be up for sale this summer. I know he's someone that's been talked about as a potential replacement for Hector Bellerin at right back, but I don't necessarily see that one coming to fruition, if I'm honest. I can't imagine they'd want to sell him so soon. What else have we got here? Let's see what you guys are saying before we move on. Big hello to David Huntley, Dave Huntley, sorry. He says, big fan, Harry. Keep up the honest facts and format. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate your support. Akshat says, Harry, you need to keep on reminding viewers to hit the like button. We have thick skin. I got told off by a couple of people in the comments yesterday for doing that a couple of times on the show yesterday. But as I say, it does really help, and it does make the channel grow. You know, off the back of getting a good like count, yesterday's video on Ben White did really good numbers, and we subsequently gained a load of subscribers off the back of that. So yeah, I am going to remind you now, because there are a fair amount of you watching this live right now across the multiple platforms. If you could please hit that like button, it would really, really help. Let's set a target. Let's try and get to 75 likes by the time we finish the stream. That would be really, really helpful, and it's certainly achievable. So please do hit the like button. Glad you got thick skin, Akshat. Cheers. Let's go back over to the live chat. Let's pick up this super chat from Inni. Thank you very much, my friend, for your very, very kind donation to the channel. He says, hey, Harry, what baffles me is all the talk before the season ended about we have had meetings and know what our targets will be. Now, I get this. A lot of Arsenal fans were kind of under the impression that we were going to go into this summer knowing exactly who it is that we wanted to sign. And I think we did. I think we did have a plan. I do think that was true. I do think that Arsenal, you know, had worked out what it was they wanted to achieve in the transfer window. The problem is, and I say this all the time with drawing up transfer target lists, it is subject to so many things, right? So, for example, we could have looked at the midfield and gone, this is our list of players that we're looking at. We're looking at Manuel Locatelli. We're looking at Yves Bissouma. We're looking at Ruben Neves. Now, I'm just using these three as an example, right? Don't buy into what I'm saying here. But the concept is the point I'm trying to say. So, Locatelli, number 1. Ruben Neves, number 2. Yves Bissouma, number 3, let's say. Then when you come to that summer, you've got to then, first of all, be able to afford what it is that club are asking for. And I suppose you'll never really know what their asking price is until you enter those negotiations. You could probably guess, you could probably estimate what you believe to be a fair price. But, you know, until you sit down and have those negotiations, it's very difficult to do that. So you sit down with, for example, Manuel Locatelli, and you say, we want Manuel Locatelli. He is our number 1 midfielder. This is what we're going to pay. This is what we can pay. Juventus also want him. Both of you have an offer accepted, and Manuel Locatelli decides, I would rather join Juventus than Arsenal. Transfers off, it's out of your hands, and you move on to the next player on the list. And that's what I'm trying to say. You know, you can have your list of players, but there are so many things that need to fall in place for these deals to be done, especially these high value ones, that you cannot, you know, you cannot possibly know that Arsenal did not, you know, did not map out their targets. And then you move to, you know, you move down the list. You've tried Locatelli. That's not happening. You move on to Ruben Neves, and Ruben Neves says, you know, I'm happy to join, but Wolves all of a sudden want more money than you're able to pay. So this is the point, right? We're talking about a list of players that Arsenal want to sign. We're talking about Arsenal having identified targets previously. Remember that a lot of what we read, a lot of what we hear is bullshit at this time of year as well. Yeah, there are a lot of reports that have credence, that have information behind them, or they have sort of something about them. There is something there that's prompted that report. But this is a time of the year when football journalists, football outlets, media outlets, their primary target is to drive traffic and to drive clicks. And sometimes you can get a story that's this big turned into a story that's this big. And that is where we as fans have to be quite sensible and not get too carried away and too sucked into certain situations, because we don't actually know that all of what we're reading, hearing, predicting during this transfer window is 100% accurate. So to then beat the club with a stick over it is a little bit premature, in my opinion. For all we know, Arsenal could be targeting players right now that they identified 6 months ago that are at the very top of their list, and we just don't know about it yet. That could be the case. You look at Nuno Tavares, you look at that deal. How quickly has that gone from Arsenal being interested to him flying over to England? Happened in a matter of days, and we knew nothing about it previously. So that's my point. I get it. I get the frustration, and we'd all like to see Arsenal do business quickly, swiftly, and preferably with plenty of time ahead of the new season. But I will judge the transfer window, as I always do, at the end of the window, when I've seen what Arsenal have actually managed to achieve. Because as I always say, there are so many factors that can make your list or the players that you've identified unattainable, and therefore those transfers don't happen. Doesn't mean you didn't plan it out right, or you didn't map it out right. Sometimes there are other factors that get in the way, and when you're not a super club with incredible amounts of money that can just go and bully their way into the door and get any sort of any player you want and get yourself sat in front of players. I don't know. Inter says, Harry, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know this club is a shambles, mate. What is with the constant blind positivity? It's not blind positivity at all. I spent most of last season calling out issues that I felt the team had, certain players not performing. We have made bad transfers over the years. There's no getting away from that. It's not blind positivity. It's looking at things fairly. We're on July 6th. The transfer window doesn't close till the end of August. And because we haven't made marquee signings on July 6th, it doesn't mean we should be going into meltdown. I'm not saying you guys specifically are doing that, but there is a lot of, the club's a mess, the club's a shambles. How many of the big clubs have actually done massive deals right now during the European Championships? Very, very few. Man United haven't officially announced Sancho yet. What have Liverpool done that we didn't already know about prior to the championships? Konate, is it? We knew about that previously. Chelsea, another club. Nobody's really moving yet. That's the point. So, if we get to the last few days of the window, the last week, the last couple of weeks, then I'll be sitting here by all means saying that Arsenal are not doing the business and this is something to worry about, but just not right now. I think it's a little bit too early. Let's go back over to the live chat. Captain Caramello says it's not blind positivity, it's fan positivity. Yeah, as a fan, you got to be positive at times, haven't you? You just be miserable all the time, and then what's the point? If you don't enjoy supporting a club, if you don't get something out of it, then what's the point? Let's move on to a couple of other bits and pieces that I wanted to bring you guys up to date on, and we're going to start with Hector Bellerin's future. Now, of course, Hector Bellerin is being heavily linked with a move away from Arsenal this summer. We know that he wanted to leave the club last summer and that he was asked to stay and to remain by Mikel Arteta. It appears that Inter have at least reached an agreement with Bellerin with regards to personal terms. Now, of course, Inter have lost or are about to lose Achraf Hakimi to Paris Saint-Germain, so they are very much in the market for a right back. The big problem is that they've not been up until now able to agree a deal with Arsenal with regards to the transfer of the player. Now, we know that Inter are selling Achraf Hakimi. Why? Because they are bloody cash strapped. They are in also serious financial difficulty. It's the reason Antonio Conte walked out, having just delivered the club's first Scudetto in over a decade. Antonio Conte had a meeting with the owners, with the executives, and decided that his ambition did not match their own, that he'd be unable to build on what he'd already achieved without their backing, and so he decided to walk away. And therefore, it's no surprise to learn that Inter want to take Bellerin on loan with an option to buy him at the end of that season. This is being reported by Sport in Spain, and of course, Bellerin is being heavily linked with moves to Spain as well. But they say that that is the case with regards to Inter's interest in the player. Now, for me, this is absolutely ludicrous. You do not send Hector Bellerin out on loan, in my opinion, unless, and even still, I don't. It's not my preferred way of going about this, but you do not send him out on loan unless there is an obligation for that club to purchase him for something in the region of 15 to 20 million at the end of that. If that doesn't happen, then, you know, if that sort of obligation to buy is not in there, then I wouldn't even be considering a loan deal. Really and truly, I don't want Arsenal to do a loan deal regarding Hector Bellerin regardless. But I've said this very sort of frequently over the last month or so. This is a summer where you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of clubs taking players on loan with an obligation to buy them at the end, and essentially buying themselves an extra 12 months to be able to put together the funds. Now that fans are going to be gradually allowed back into the stadiums, now that they're going to be sort of starting to recover from the impacts of the pandemic. As I say, it's not my preference that Hector Bellerin goes out on loan. I think we should just cut our losses and be rid of him, not because I dislike him or because I'm unhappy with him or anything like that, because he clearly wants to move on. He clearly needs a new challenge, and I don't really see him as being the future for Arsenal. So, you know, that's the way I see that one. But as I say, Inter have agreed personal terms with him, but they're nowhere near, according to reports from Spain, agreeing. They're nowhere near close to agreeing a deal with Arsenal over that transfer. I mentioned Alex Runarsson a little bit earlier on, so we'll leave that. But as I said, he's moving, it looks like, to Turkey to join Altayspor, and according to Chris Wheatley's information, that is going to be a permanent deal. Elsewhere, I want to talk a little bit about, just quickly mention that Gary Lewin, of course, famous Arsenal physio, wasn't he, has been appointed the head of medicine and sports science for the Arsenal women, and that is part of the plan from the club to back the women's team more and to help them along and to make significant further investment into the women's game. So that's great news. Gary Lewin, from what I understand, was already kind of operating in a similar role, but on a part-time basis, and now he will be taking up that role full-time. So that's fantastic news. Also, William Saliba, we talked a lot about that over the last couple of days, and that William Saliba prefers a move to Marseille. We've talked about why that probably is a pretty decent fit for William Saliba, in my opinion anyway. But reports have emerged that Sampaoli, the Marseille coach, doesn't see William Saliba as a first choice option at centre back, or doesn't see him as a first choice target. He is looking at Lewin Perez, the Santos centre back. And there have been reports coming out today suggesting that Marseille have agreed a fee with Santos over the Brazilian Lewin Perez's transfer to France. So Sampaoli, not sure that William Saliba is ready to step into the heart of his defence just yet, and prefers a more experienced option. That's what we're being told. Don't know that that's going to scupper the deal. It is a loan deal, so I'd imagine it's probably very low risk for Marseille. But it just kind of backs up what we were saying yesterday with regards to the fact that, yes, Saliba would prefer to join Marseille, but that deal was not quite at the stage yet where we could talk about the loan deal being completed. Diogene says, Harry busy trying to belittle Saliba to justify Arteta's mismanagement. Not at all. I'm just relaying a report that is doing the rounds. It's not my report. I haven't made that up. I haven't plucked that out of the air and made up a story about Sampaoli not seeing Saliba as experienced enough to play in the heart of his defence. So your sort of comment, my friend, is misplaced there. Also, just wanted to touch on Lacazette a little bit, because we talked a bit about players potentially leaving the club. We talked about Reece Nelson. We talked about Ainsley Maitland-Niles sort of being told that they can leave and being made available for transfer, according to reports. But it seems that Arsenal are also open to allowing Alexandre Lacazette to move on as well. Now, remember, Alexandre Lacazette will be entering the final year of his Arsenal contract. He is in the final year of his Arsenal contract as of the 1st of July. So, what do Arsenal do? Do they extend that? Do they give him an extension and sort of plan for the future with Alexandre Lacazette? Do they look to cash in on him? Do they keep him there for the time being and risk losing him on a free at the end of the season? I don't know. I don't know what Arsenal are going to do with this. I've said all along that if Alexandre Lacazette is to remain, and I'm not sure what the terms around that would be, but if he is to remain until the end of the season, then the striking position for me is not a major priority. However, if he does leave, then it does become an area in which I feel Arsenal need to strengthen. Does Mikel Arteta see Gabriel Martinelli as an option there moving forward? I think Mikel Arteta probably does, but I'm not convinced that Martinelli himself believes that is the position for him. Balogun has obviously been signed up on a new contract. Eddie Nketiah looks like he'll probably leave the club as well. So Lacazette's future is quite important, in my opinion, because it could potentially, spark a bit of a chain reaction where Arsenal then need to go out and spend quite substantially on a centre forward. And then what does that mean for the likes of Following Balogun, who's just signed a new contract, and Gabriel Martinelli, who's potentially going to be kind of molded into a striker? I don't know. It's an interesting situation, but the reports that were coming out yesterday suggested, and I think it was Football.London actually, that reported that Lacazette could be allowed to leave this summer, and Arsenal are quite open to that. That's an interesting one, because I think that means that then we have further work to do in another area that we maybe didn't necessarily plan on doing business this summer. Let's go back over to the live chat. Brad says Danny Ings rejected a new contract at Southampton. That's correct. That was reported yesterday by David Ornstein at The Athletic. He says, would you take him? Honestly, no. I like the player. I think he's a good player. I think he's a very competent striker. I think he's someone who has proven that he can score goals at Premier League level. However, his fitness issues are a major problem for me. And I just, I don't, is it because we're Arsenal fans? We've kind of been conditioned to be majorly put off by players that are just injured all the time. It doesn't feel like smart business for me. What's he going to want in terms of wages as well? You'd imagine that it's going to be quite significant. I've just talked about a load of striking options that we currently have and where we stand on that. So, maybe if Lacazette goes, then Danny Ings, someone you could think about. But I would argue that we've already got a striker that likes to run in behind, like Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And if we lost Lacazette, I think we'd need someone who's a little bit more able to drop into the deeper positions, get involved in the build-up play, link up with those around him, bring others into the game. And I'm not sure Danny Ings is really that man. And therefore, I would say stylistically, he probably doesn't fit. I think having a balanced squad is, a lot of the time, is about having different options and having players who can do certain jobs. I think that's really important in making sure your team does not become one-dimensional, and that is being able to have different horses for different courses. And with Aubameyang not going anywhere, I think that you know, if we'd lost Lacazette, we'd need Lacazette. We need someone of Lacazette's mold, someone who brings to the table what Lacazette brings to the table in order to compensate that. Because I do think a lot of Arsenal's best performances last season, and I know there were very few and far between, came when Lacazette was playing in that role. And it takes a very specific type of striker to play that role. And I just don't see Danny Ings being that man, aside from all the fitness issues that he clearly has had in the past and probably will continue to have. Right, we're going to leave it there, I think. Lots of great chat, as always. Let's quickly check in where we are in terms of the likes. As I always say, it really, really does help. It really does. And I'd love for you guys to hit that like button if you haven't done so already. I said I wanted 75. We're on 58. There's actually over 200 of you watching us right now across the multiple platforms. So 100 likes surely is achievable between now and the end of the show. Come on. We've got some Euro 2020 content dropping for you tomorrow morning, where we'll be looking back on the game between Italy and Spain in the Euro 2020 semi-final. Got my Italy shirt on today. And then we will be also in that piece, we'll be reviewing that, but we'll also be looking ahead to England versus Denmark, which takes place tomorrow. And then on Thursday morning, we'll be looking back at England versus Denmark, and then looking ahead to the final a little bit as well, with that to come this Sunday as well. So plenty of Arsenal content, plenty of Euro content in the mix as well over the coming days. As I said yesterday, big thank you, or as I said earlier, big thank you to those of you who have signed up to the channel and have subscribed to the channel over the last 24 hours. As I say, we had a massive influx of around about 100 subscribers last night when I was sitting there watching TV. It just kept popping up. Subscribers, and it was amazing. So thank you for your continued support. If you are listening via the audio platforms, don't forget to leave us a review, a 5-star one preferably, because it really, really does help in that sense too. But thank you all so much. I'll catch you all later on. I'm going to be joined by Sophie Nicolau from the Highbury squad this afternoon. We're going to have a good old chinwag about the Arsenal. We'll take your comments from the live chat box as well. If you fancy joining us for that, that'll be at 4:30 p.m. UK time today, and that'll be available in podcast format from first thing tomorrow morning. Until next time, take care. Ciao.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.